Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
Coming to you from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida, on the FAIRtax official Facebook page and also on excluded.tv. We need to mention them a little bit more than we have in the past little bit.
Yep.
This is a subscription platform named because of the fact that the big social media platforms will exclude a lot of content that they just politically don't agree with. And if you want to see what the big social media platforms don't want you to see, subscribe to Excluded TV. It's a very nominal $30 a year subscription, well worth it. You can see the FAIRtax Guys here every week on excluded.tv as long as we continue to do this, and that's going to be for a while.
Yep, and let me remind you to log in, get a membership, whatever, at fairtax.org or bigsolution.org. Those are the main websites for the Americans for Fair Taxation. They need your help. I mean, and if you can see to it, join the 1040 Club, in which you agree to send them $10.40 a month. We really need this because we got to get this going. I mentioned last week that we had somebody who said, well, you know, I haven't seen anything happening in the fair tax. Well, it depends on where you look. Okay, if you're looking in Washington, no, you're not going to see much happen on the fair tax. We know that President Trump is surrounded by fair tax people. We know that, starting with the vice president, who was a fair tax co-sponsor while he was in Congress, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, all right, Mike Huckabee's daughter. So we know that the president is aware of the fair tax, and we're trying to make it possible so that when the political climate is right, that President Trump will go with the fair tax. But right now,
if they start spreading his tax returns around, he should be fairly easy to convince. Let's have a system that doesn't have any tax returns.
And
there's only one of those, and that's the fair tax.
Yeah, we got some people in Congress that for some reason they think it's a good idea to take a private citizen's tax returns and spread them all over the internet. I'm not sure what purpose that serves. For one thing, if a person had a problem with their tax return, the IRS will catch up with them, okay? And I know for a fact, because I've read this before, the IRS has a division that all they do is they audit the mega wealthy, like Trump. You know, they go over their tax returns with a fine-tooth comb. So if there was a problem with the president's tax returns, the IRS would know about it. So what is I know this is a foolish question. What does Nancy Pelosi want with the president's tax returns? They want to find something that they can include as embarrassing, but everything in there, I suspect, everything in my tax return, everything that doesn't get audited by the IRS, we have to assume that it's perfectly legal. And if there are reasons, like we talked about Amazon not paying any taxes, but they paid no taxes legally because that's the tax code that Congress has given us. And a lot of people in Congress that want to get a hold of somebody's tax return and try to make it embarrassing some way, they probably voted for the very measures that allow them to reduce their tax code. Now, this is a crazy system, and the only thing we can do is put it out of its misery, put it out of our misery.
Yeah, one of the things we're going to get into in today's edition of FAIRtax Power Radio is just how crazy the current system is, how much it costs just to comply with the tax code, not counting your tax liability itself. What do you have to spend over and above your tax liability to keep yourself within the law? But let's not get too far ahead, the cart too far ahead of the horse here. Let's remind everyone of our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, and we got a note here at that address. In fact, our last program, we were on live when we were just so much went through so fast. I meant to get to this, and it just flew right on by me.
Yeah, I can't believe 30 minutes went by that fast.
Yeah, but we got an email from a C. McNabb. I'm not sure what the C stands for, but that's all we got. And he says, hey, FAIRtax Guys, I'm getting the question, what administration would deal with writing the checks to send out monthly? I have searched the FAIRtax websites and I haven't found the answer. This is one of the many questions I've been getting. So what government administration would be writing that prebate check? Oh, that's an easy one. Social Security Administration will be doing that.
Yep. So, and plus, and I think the criticism was, oh, whoever's going to write the checks, it's another huge bureaucracy. No. It's a very simple matter. The states will collect the fair tax from the vendors in those states. 45 of the states already have a sales tax, so they know how to do this, okay? So they will collect it, and so as far as the prebate goes, each family, all they have to do, there's no tax return, all they have to do is file, and they can probably do this online. Who are the people in your family unit, and what are their Social Security numbers? Because they're going to have to use E-Verify to make sure that...
Couple of things here. They have to make sure that it is a valid Social Security number and that the same one's not being used in multiple places. So that's why the Social Security Administration will be handling the prebate. McNabb made one more little comment. Get rid of the IRS and they would just come up with another scam administration. But if you get rid of the IRS via the fair tax, they get rid of the income tax that the IRS is charged with administering and enforcing, then there's no need to have an administration or an enforcement level at the federal level.
That's right.
As we've noted, that will be collected by the states, it will be administered by the states, it will be enforced by the state departments of revenue. There will just be a small office within the Department of the Treasury at the federal level to receive the money.
From the states.
From the states. But there will be no enforcement, no administration at the federal level of the fair tax because it'll be collected by and administered by and enforced by the states.
Yeah. You know, and I think the Founding Fathers envisioned something like this, but they couldn't possibly do a sales tax, you know, at the retail level back then. They didn't have computers. There was just no way of enforcing it or even keeping track of it, all right? That's different now. We can do it very easily.
Yeah, but to answer his question, the Social Security Administration will handle the prebate because it involves Social Security numbers, and I would imagine that there is probably an online process. There will be, you know, if you get a new child born into your household and you need to add a Social Security number to your household, or, you know, a kid gets married and goes out on their own and is no longer, you know, part of your household, you can update that information online, and your prebate, again, is determined strictly by your household size, nothing else. Doesn't matter how much you make, doesn't matter how much you spend. The prebate is determined by your household size, period.
And it will not take a massive bureaucracy to administer the prebate. It's very simple.
And it's not an entitlement. You're not getting anybody else's money.
Good point.
You are getting back your own money, just like the tax refund you get from the IRS. When your withholding exceeds your tax liability, you get back the extra. And that's what's going to be the thing with the prebate. You will get back money that was collected from you at the cash register that you do not owe because, again, you do not owe a dime of fair tax until your spending exceeds the poverty level. So they give you back all the tax that's collected from you on that first level of spending, and then you only start taking it out of your pocket to pay it when your spending exceeds the poverty level.
Yeah. I think Mr. McNabb was a victim of what we call a fair tax denier.
I assume that's a C might be a girl. I'm not sure. It didn't say what the C stands for.
Okay.
Let's not be sexist here. But whichever it is, that was a good question. And that was, of course, that was an easy one. Social Security Administration will handle the prebate.
Yeah. Yep, and so much for another fair tax denier.
Fair tax denier?
Yeah.
Now, that's a neat little phrase I've never heard before. Where'd you dig that up?
Yeah, you know, you hear about climate deniers?
Well, those guys are just telling the truth.
Well, people who, I don't know, I guess they refuse to learn about the fair tax, and they'll come up with something like this. Oh, the prebate is just another big bureaucracy. No, it's not. Social Security is sending out a lot of checks right now. I've heard somewhere that like 60% of the American people, American households, are getting some kind of a government check. Okay, could be a retirement check, you know, Social Security. It could be I'm sorry, drew a blank there. But anyways, Social Security can do that. It's not going to be a big deal, and it's not going to require another huge, onerous IRS-like bureaucracy. That's not going to happen.
I heard the incredible claim made that the fair tax will require an agency bigger than the IRS to make it work.
Nah, that's nonsense. Oh, jeez. The fair tax is so simple. Remember, it's collected at the point of sale. You know, so the store that you go to buy your coffee maker is going to collect the fair tax. The state is going to collect the fair tax from the individual vendors. Most of them are doing that now. They know how to do it, okay? And then the state is going to collect it and send it to the federal treasury. Both the vendor and the state get to keep 0.25% of what they collect for their troubles. So that's going to be a nice thing for them.
There's an incentive to combat evasion.
Yeah.
You know, under the fair tax, it would take two people, the buyer and the seller, to evade the fair tax. Well, I'm not going to charge it to you. Well, if I'm getting to keep some of what I charge you in taxes, I'm not letting you off the hook. Yeah. No way. That's going to happen. And real quickly, in case we have some new folks here who have not really researched the fair tax greatly, the fair tax is going to be inclusive. It is going to be included in the price tag you see on the item at the shelf. It's not going to turn a $100 item on the shelf into a $123 item at the cash register like the state sales taxes we're familiar with now actually do.
Yeah.
So it'll be included in the price like when you buy gasoline. You pay a lot of tax when you buy a gallon of gas.
Yeah.
But you don't have anything added on. If the price is, $2.50 a gallon and you pump 10 gallons, it's $25. They don't add anything on to it.
The thing with gasoline, though, is it doesn't spell out the taxes, does it?
You don't see the taxes.
No.
You just get, pump price gallons total.
Yeah.
You don't see how much of that pump price actually is tax, and it's a bunch. You can look it up online and find out. But when you get a receipt under the fair tax, it will show you how much of the $100 you spent. It'll show you that 23 of that $100 you spent was fair tax.
Yeah.
So you'll see what you're spending. You know what the government is costing you, and hopefully we can rein in some of the abuses that have been happening in
that means every single person in this country, when they make a purchase and when they get the receipt, it's going to have the fair tax for that purchase on there. Every single time. Right now, withholding is kind of like a stealth tax almost. People forget about withholding. They say, when you ask them, well, how much do you make at that job? They'll tell you what they take home. They don't tell you. They forget about what their actual salary is.
Yeah, you ask them how much income tax they pay.
Yeah,
you'll get one of three answers. None of your doggone business.
Yeah.
Or they will tell you the amount of the check they had to write on April 15th.
Yep.
Or the worst answer of all, I didn't pay anything. I got money back. Yeah. No, you paid a ton. You just did withholding with just hides.
Yes.
From you how much the federal government is taking from it, because you look at your net amount. You don't look at your gross amount. With a fair tax, you get your full gross amount.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So
let's get into this thing. This Tax Foundation article that you found the other day, talking about the incredibly ridiculous compliance costs of the IRS regulations. And again, we're talking about just how much it costs to comply with the tax code, not how much you have to pay in taxes. This is what you pay on top of your taxes, what the current system forces you to do. And it is insane. The growing complexity has led to incredibly large compliance costs for both households and businesses.
Yep, and these are the key. Now, this is from June of 2016, so it's a couple years old. But the concepts are still the same, okay? And this is from the Tax Foundation. We get a lot of good stuff from the Tax Foundation, okay? So their key findings, what Bob just read, about the growing complexity. 2, it is possible to estimate the total cost of compliance on the U.S. economy. Ooh. And Americans will, oh boy. Hope you're sitting down for this, folks. Americans will spend more than 8.9 billion, with a B, 8.9 billion hours complying with IRS tax filing requirements in 2016. So what is it now? Could be worse. It might be better, but I don't know. Bob said it was less on his, so maybe it'll be a little bit better.
Took me a little less time this time than last time, but
yeah, and
still more than it should.
And what's the last one there, Bob?
All in all, tax compliance will cost the U.S. economy, hope you're sitting down, $409 billion with a B, $409 billion is how much tax compliance. How many walls could we build with that money? Of course, that's a different issue we're not going to get into.
So let's get into how did they arrive at those figures, 8.9 billion hours and $409 billion, taken out of the economy. All right, there are many reasons to reform the tax code. A high marginal corporate tax rate, poorly defined tax base, and out-of-date international tax system. And I mean, those are good reasons for reforming the tax code. And when we say reform, we don't mean what they did in 2017 where they changed the tax code. That was relief. That was not reform. We still have the same tax system.
Reform means that you fundamentally change the way that the system operates.
That's right.
And as Carrie Bowers has noted so eloquently several times, the tax reform we got now was turning a system based on individual and corporate income taxes administered and enforced by the IRS to a system of personal and corporate income taxes administered and enforced by the IRS.
Yeah.
Where is the reform? There is no reform in that.
So one of the things about the tax code that is a problem is the complexity, and that's what they're getting at here. The added complexity imposes a real cost on the U.S. economy. Tackling the cost of tax complexity to our nation's economy should be a priority for lawmakers. Is it?
No.
No, it doesn't seem to be, does it?
No.
Yeah, but it should be. And when we get done with this, you're going to agree with us, too. Okay, the expanding size of the tax code. This sounds like a science fiction movie, but it's not so funny.
Where no one has gone before.
1955, the Internal Revenue Code stood at 409,000 words. Since then, it has grown to a total of 2.4 million words, or almost 6 times greater. And remember, this was 2016.
Yeah, that figure's 2 years old. It's probably close to 3 billion words now.
Yeah. So, however, the tax statutes passed by Congress are only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to tax complexity. This is a very important paragraph. There are roughly 7.7 million words of tax regulation promulgated by the IRS over the last century, which clarify how the U.S. tax statutes work in practice. In other words, instructions. The Congress passes the statutes. The IRS has to issue the explanation. How do you comply with these statutes? And that amounts to 7.7 million words on top of it. On top of that, there are almost 60,000 pages of tax-related case law. Because people will challenge the IRS. Oh, you said I couldn't do this, we're going to take you to court. And sometimes the tax court agrees with the IRS. Sometimes they agree with the plaintiff. But each one of those court decisions makes law. That becomes part of the law.
Has the force of law.
Yeah, and we're all responsible for that. So altogether, when you add up all those pages, that's how we come up with like the 76,000 pages of tax form. Yeah, it's the statutes, the regulations, the court cases. When you add all that together, and we are responsible for every word of it, every single word. So it's a little crazy.
It does. It takes time to comply with the tax code, and time is money in the world of business. Business owner who needs to file a complex tax return, like Amazon did, no doubt.
Yep.
They hire an accountant or a tax lawyer. I imagine Amazon hired more than one. They may cost up to $70,000 a year or more for that. That's $70,000 the business owner cannot devote to purchasing equipment, hiring workers, providing benefits, or anything like that. Economists call this an opportunity cost. It results in lost productivity. How much lost productivity was lost out of Amazon to get their zero tax rate?
Yeah.
But 8.9 billion with a B hours are needed to comply with the tax code. That completes to 409 billion a year. Now, I love this article here. They have broken it out by all of the various different IRS forms. How much cost in time and money to do this. And the number one most expensive. Yeah,
there's part of it. There's the other part, and that's only the first 49 forms.
Yeah, but you ought to be able to Google up Tax Foundation and hopefully find a link to this article.
Yeah.
Because sometimes just doing numbers, even if it's on video and of course the audio-only podcast as well, that gets a little kinky. But the number one, the worst offender, as far as you're looking at all the IRS forms that it costs to comply with, is, you might expect, the U.S. business income tax return. Now, these are some pretty big numbers. Let's see if I can figure this. This is the total hours burden.
Yep.
That is $2,832,586,000 500,000 hours are burned by American businesses filling out the business tax return. That translates into $147,431,625,000 are spent by American businesses dealing with that one tax form alone. Now, I could do a lot of skydiving with that money. I tell you what.
And that money, that is money that businesses are spending just to comply with the tax code. It's not money that they're spending to expand their business and hire more people. It's just keeping themselves legal and hopefully, and making sure that they're complying 100% with the tax code and hopefully taking advantage of some of the legal loopholes that are in there. Okay? So that costs them a lot. Then the individual returns comes next.
Second on the list, the individual tax returns. Those numbers are almost as bad.
Yeah.
2,647,000,000 hours as opposed to 2,832,647 for the individual one. The cost in dollars to fill out the individual income tax, the 1040 form, $98,680,160,000 is what it costs the American economy just to fill out that one IRS form. That is insane.
Well, and let's use the example. You mentioned that you already finished your taxes, right?
I did.
Yep. And it took you about an hour and a half this time? That's to actually do the tax return. But in order to get the information that the tax return requires, you got to keep records throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, so all year long, that record keeping, this amount of time on the previous page there, that breaks down to about 25 hours per person per year, and for and that's per person. That's for 320 million people. That's for every man, woman, and child.
About 180 million taxpayers.
Yeah. So it's about 50 hours per taxpayer. All right. Even if your tax return is simple and doesn't take very long, the record keeping, you have to involve that too. So.
Okay, we got about 8 minutes left in this episode. Time is flying. Let's get to income tax returns for an S corporation. Okay, that is the third most expensive item in terms of time and money. That is only 889,393,518 hours.
And my wife and I had an S corp when we had our truck leasing business. All that means that the corporation doesn't actually pay the taxes. All right, I kept the daily and weekly tax return tax information on QuickBooks. And then I copied the file and I gave it to our accountant, and he figured it out. And he says, "Okay, your corporation earned this much, and you owe this much in taxes." But the corporation doesn't pay for it. And an S corp, it's passed through. That's why sometimes they're called pass-throughs. It's passed through to the shareholders. Well, my wife and I were the only employees and the only shareholders. So he gave us a form K-1. We had to include that on our personal income taxes, whether the corporation made money or lost money that year, but it passed through to ours. So S corps go through it. But it's a business. You got to keep records. You have to use something like QuickBooks or something like that, and you really, really need to have an attorney, not attorney, but a CPA, a tax professional, help you with this. And the bigger your business is, the more help you're going to need. It's just absolutely necessary.
This next one I've never even heard of. It's Form 4562.
That's depreciation.
Depreciation and amortization. So you had to deal with that as well.
Yeah.
That one cost $448,368,447 hours. That translates into 23 billion. 300. These numbers are written awfully close to the paper. 337,577,577,666. I don't like 666.
Anyways, we're not going to go through all of these because it listed the 49 top forms in terms of what they cost in hours and money, and then it's at number 50 here, all remaining regulations. And I saw somewhere there are well over 1,000. In fact, I think there's over 1,100 forms altogether. Most of those are affected, for business people.
Why don't we get rid of this and replace it with the FAIRtax?
Yeah, because this is just a little nuts. I mean,
it's more than a little nuts. That's incredibly nuts.
Yeah. So the conclusion: time is precious, and Americans should not be forced to waste time complying with the IRS tax forms. On other occasions, the Tax Foundation has used macroeconomic modeling to show that a well-designed tax reform plan can improve economic growth, boost wages, and encourage new investment throughout the economy. However, the Tax Foundation's model results generally do not factor in how much time Americans will save by complying a simpler tax code. I have an idea on how you can figure out how much is saved by using a simpler tax code. When we go to the FAIRtax, we're going to save $409 billion a year.
This is how you fix it.
Yeah.
Get rid of all that $409 billion expensive system and go with this one. You just pay your taxes anonymously at the cash register when you buy things. Now, we're running short on time again on this episode. Let's remind everybody of our IRS motto contest.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to come up with, 15, let's say 15, money, $20 maybe?
Yeah.
$15, $20
we'll get
worth.
something.
$20 worth of stuff out of the FAIRtax logo store will go to the winner of our IRS logo contest, so our IRS motto contest. So if you have a motto that you think applies to the Internal Revenue Service, now, what Bill of Rights is already taken?
Yep.
We have what it takes to take what you have is already taken. Yep. You got to come up with something other than that.
The first one, the one that started this whole thing is the IRS's motto is never let hard work go unpunished.
Yeah. So we want to see what folks come up with for the IRS motto should be. Send it to the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com, or you can drop it off on our FAIRtax Guys Facebook page, and whoever we decide comes up with the best IRS motto is going to get some stuff out of the FAIRtax logo store.
Yes.
Might even get one of these.
Yes.
Or what other kind of goodies they got over there?
Well, we have all kinds of things. I mean, you can buy a packet of these palm cards. All right. Now, these are a little dated because they have it's always HR 29 in the House.
No, it's not. It's HR 25 in the House.
What did I say?
You said 29.
Okay.
That's a $50 fine and a 5-yard penalty.
Okay, thanks. HR 25 in the House. The Senate bill will be different this year. It was S18 for the last Congress. They haven't actually filed the Senate bill yet. They're still working on that. But you can get a packet of these things and then pass them out to people. If they have any questions about it. You don't have to be a tax expert. We're not. I'm a retired science teacher. Bob's a computer programmer and radio guy, okay? We're not tax experts, but we have studied a lot of this.
But I know I don't like this one. This is my 9x9 scramble cube. I do like my little FAIRtax cube. That works well.
So somebody came up with the idea, we need to come up with a FAIRtax Rubik's Cube.
I'm supposed to check that out. I hadn't done it yet.
Okay. Anyways, also in the store, the FAIRtaxLogoStore.org, you can buy these pins, you can buy pens, you can buy shirts. As you can see, we get shirts, jackets, hats, tote bags, travel mugs. I mean, there's just all kinds of things in there to visibly show your support for the FAIRtax. So please go to FAIRtaxLogoStore.org and order something there and display your support for the FAIRtax. Because at some point in the future here, tax reform is going to come up again. It's going to come up again, and it is inevitable. And when it does, we need to be ready. We need millions of citizens across the country as FAIRtax fans.
Yeah, if we see people displaying FAIRtax stuff, then we can dispel the notion that nothing's happening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as somebody said on the last one. So, so there's all kinds of stuff. And don't forget these neat little prebate cards, all right? The 2019s are in. We got basic information about the FAIRtax on one side and the prebate schedule. People love this because they love to look on their line, ooh, mom and dad and 2 kids, we're getting $648 under the FAIRtax each month.
Mine would be $479 a
That's
month.
right. Retired couples, like,
Yes.
you know.
I'd go skydiving on that too.
Yeah, my wife and I, and Bob and his wife, and so forth. Yeah, $479, not bad. Okay, so all kinds of stuff in the FAIRtax logo store. Please go there and show your support. Really
Again,
appreciate it.
catch FAIRtax Power Radio on the FAIRtax official Facebook page and on Excluded TV. We're on at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday. Sometimes we're live, sometimes we're recorded, but the comments will always be live as we tell that. So hopefully
That's right.
you'll be with us again, same time, same station next week. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Reminding you the FAIRtax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
You'll demand it.
there we go.
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
We're the FAIRtax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the FAIRtax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
You'll demand it.
Yeah.
We got to get rid